Welcome to another exciting episode of Comic Watchers. Comic Watchers is brought to you by Comic Watch. Comic Watch is your source for all your comics and media news and reviews written for fans by fans. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and get the word out there that we're coming for the clickbait sites. It's our time now. We're down to only 3 this week. Brian is busy with work stuff. Derbs is busy with other stuff. So you're forced to just listen to me, Matt, and JJ this week. I do apologize in advance, but, you tuned in. You knew what you were getting.
Actually, I think by virtue of what you just said, they didn't know what they were getting into, especially since there's still 5 guys' names in the credits.
Quite possible.
Hey, I'm not
Quite
getting
possible.
my money's worth out of this free podcast.
But in all fairness, even when Brian's not here, he is the one that's still getting us out to iTunes, SoundCloud, and another one, Spotify. And Derbs is still doing the editing and getting everything encoded and doing all that computery stuff that I can't do. So even in their absence, they're still with us.
We miss you, Derbs. And to a lesser extent, Brian.
Oh, man. That's cold-blooded.
Cold-blooded.
Brian knows what I mean.
Hopefully the Bryans are back with us next week. But for this week, we are going to kick it back over to Matt for news once again.
Hello, hello, hello. News of the day this week. Ian Glenn of Game of Thrones has been cast as Bruce Wayne for Titans Season 2. That's quite a big casting coup since he's got that Game of Thrones cred. Speaking of which, I think Cody's planning to talk about that show just a little bit later in the episode. So we'll try to go spoiler-free as we can on that. Disney Plus's official launch date is November 12th of this year for $6.99 a month. Live Marvel shows include WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, and animated What If. That's pretty cool. I think they've dumped a ton of comics on there too. I don't have the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it's at least comparable to DC's recent edition of 20,000. So awesome. In July, Marvel is going to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Acts of Vengeance by having a spiritual sequel of sorts called you're shaking your head.
They are going to do
that. A spiritual sequel of sorts called Acts of Evil that's going to run through a series of annuals, same theme, heroes fighting villains that they don't ordinarily go up against. So woo. Hellboy, the new one, came out last week, and unfortunately, it only made $12 million domestically on a $50 million budget and got pretty scathingly bad reviews all around. So it seems as though this will be the demise of Hellboy on film for a while.
It does. I've heard from a few people that it's not nearly as bad as the reviews are saying, and it wouldn't be the first time bad early reviews have tanked opening weekend sales for a movie before anybody even has a chance to judge.
Right.
But I haven't seen it myself, so I can't say
I haven't
sure.
seen it either. It looks very, very reliant on CGI spectacle, which isn't quite my cup of tea. But it's still Hellboy, so at some point I'll give it a chance.
Yeah, exactly.
We are sending our very own Nicholas Osborne tonight. He's going to go watch it. He's going to write up a review tomorrow. We should have a review up within the next 48 hours of Nick's take, which is a take that I tend to take pretty seriously. Like he knows his stuff. He's pretty sharp, and he's not in it to overly bash anybody. So it should be a good, hot, honest take.
And he's a big Hellboy fan of the comics, so he can give us a good measure of comic accuracy and stuff like that, which your average film reviewer might not be able to. Because I did hear that it excelled at comic accuracy as much as anything else, which might be something that an average actual movie critic might not be able to judge it on.
Right. So also on the film front, Shazam was #1 movie in the country, second weekend in a row. Woo. And there was a there's a Star Wars movie coming out later this year. Maybe you heard of it. Got an official title, The Rise of Skywalker. Blah, blah, blah. And it had a teaser trailer, which more importantly than anything else had Lando Calrissian in it. Hell yeah. And a certain cackling Uber villain appears to be back. So that is it for news of the week.
I have two things.
Oh yeah, go ahead, John.
Criminal from Image, which is the Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips kind of periodical series of series, if you will, is doing a OGN format hardcover in the same vein as My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies for their 2-issue arc that was issues 2 and 3 of the current Criminal ongoing series, which was Bad Weekend, which was a sequel to Bad Night, which I want to say it was 2015. Oh yeah, prequel. That's what I mean to say. It was a few years before Bad Night, starring the same character. But they said that it'll be in a hardcover format, one-off, which is what they did with My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies, and which was just phenomenal. And they did say it'll feature some extended scenes and additional artwork and material, and some referential behind-the-scenes material as well. So definitely something to look out for. I want to say that was late spring that's coming out. And second thing, as I've said before, I'm the only one on this show that cares about, Conan, sword and sorcery, stuff like that. So Marvel announced about an hour before we recorded today that they are doing a black and white edition for the Savage Sword of Conan first arc trade paperback to what's the word? Capitalize. That's not bad. Yeah, that's not bad. In homage. Sorry, that's too damn funny. And in homage to the original series, which was, of course, in black and white newsprint format. They didn't say anything to the effect of it being in magazine format, which it's funny because I've been reviewing that series for the site, and I have seen multiple people say, call me when it's a black and white magazine again, which is the stupidest damn thing I ever heard in my life. But they're getting half their wish, so maybe some of those cynical jerks will buy something that was made in the last 40 years and not act like they're still somehow the dominant spending force in comic books.
No, pander to me, damn it.
I want my Silver Age omnibuses. You guys are crap for not making more Silver Age omnibuses. All right. I guess that's all we have for news.
That sounds good. Well, we have 3 spotlight books for you as usual this week. We're going to start off with Marvel's Symbiote Spider-Man #1. Then we're going to move into the first arc of Image's Outer Darkness. And then we're going to close with Wonder Twins #1 from DC's Wonder Comics imprint. I don't anticipate that we'll spend a whole lot of time on number 3. Wonder Twins #3, pardon me. The midway point of a 6-issue miniseries. It's an odd choice, we know, but we haven't talked about it yet. And we talked about literally everything else that's come out this week in the recent, past month. So starting with Symbiote Spider-Man #1, I'll probably push this over to you, Matt, if you don't mind to kind of introduce it. But it's Peter David writing Spider-Man. It's Ken Lashley on art, right?
No, Ken Lashley, did the recent issue of Spider-Man featuring the Gibbon. Art on this was Greg Land.
Oh, right.
Yes, yeah. Symbiote Spider-Man #1 of a 5-issue miniseries from Marvelous Comics. The idea of it is these are untold stories from the period when Peter Parker had the symbiote costume, but did not know yet it was in fact a symbiote. Peter David, one of the all-time greats, wrote the series. And he kind of, when it was first announced, I remember he went out of his way to assure fans that yes, these stories do fit in continuity. I am not as well read on all of the Symbiote saga stuff as others may be, so I can't personally attest to that. But just by very nature of the comic, that statement, it leads you to believe that what you're getting is a comic about Spider-Man and his symbiote and the effects it has on him and kind of fleshing that story out. What you're really going to get, though, is a story about Mysterio. And I love Mysterio. He's one, what's not to love? He's got that classic Steve Ditko design and the big bubble head, and he casts illusions, and he's Jake Gyllenhaal, and he's one of Spidey's classic foes. This is great. But the story has to do with him planning a pretty cut and dried bank robbery, and it goes wrong, and a bank teller gets killed, and he feels some significant remorse over it. And there's more to it than that, but in a nutshell. So he's feeling he's beating up on himself a whole lot, and he's a couple months after this happened, he's at the grave of this woman apologizing to her tombstone. And it just happens to be there at the same time as Peter Parker with Felicia Hardy, his then girlfriend, aka the Black Cat, who are there visiting Uncle Ben, also very coincidentally in that same graveyard. And anyway, Peter Parker realizes, oh my God, that's Mysterio. Now I know who killed this woman. And then he goes and fights him. And that's it. That's kind of it for the issue. And I just read this and I felt extremely misled by the title, because I was expecting this book that focused on, like I said, the symbiote and its relationship to Peter Parker, and seeing a little bit more of an expansion of certain themes from that era, like what it was doing to him. And we do get little bits of that. Like, he does seem, when he's wearing the suit, he does seem like he's angrier. But it's just sort of there. It's not really touched on. I don't know. It's just kind of a non-factor to the story itself. And in fact, Peter Parker himself is pretty much a non-factor. He's there, it seems as though, because the title of the book is Spider-Man. And that just bugged me. And maybe, there's still 4 issues to go with this. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater based on a first issue that just kind of failed to meet my personal expectations. It wasn't bad. And like I said, Peter David is one of the all-time greats. I'll always be curious for to check out what something he's writing. Having said that, there's a flashback sequence in it where, and this just drove me absolutely nuts. Maybe more than it should have. Maybe I'm just a big nerd, but there's no maybe about that. But there's a flashback sequence where Spider-Man is in his black costume and he's jumping between the Twin Towers. This stood out to me for a couple of different reasons. So it's generally understood that Marvel's infamous sliding timeline encompasses around 12 years of time within the universe itself. Well, it's 2019 now, and Spider-Man was already a few years into his Spidey career when he got the black costume. So how could he be leaping between the Twin Towers? It just it's one of those things that only a nerd would catch, I think. And it just but it brought me out of the story to such a degree that I had a hard time getting back into it. So, I could beat my head on the wall over that. And maybe I did a little bit too much in my review in hindsight. But Cody's nodding. But it took me out of the story. And when something like that takes me out of the story, I start, again, this is just me, I start over-analyzing every aspect of it. Probably not to a healthy degree, but so for me, this book, just kind of a swing and a miss, at least for the first issue. I think the building blocks are there for something solid. But first issue, it just felt kind of egregious. So, JJ, what did you think about it?
Well, I think I liked it more than you did. No, I don't think you were necessarily hating on or disliking it without warrant. I do think that this issue took some time to lay out. Sorry, my headphones hat. You know, this issue took some time to lay out a sympathetic villain in that Mysterio feels guilty over the death of the woman, which it was an accidental death. It's not like he did anything. Well, I mean, he didn't not do anything. He hit a guard, and the guard's gun went off and shot the woman he was holding hostage in the chest. So, yeah, he was basically directly responsible for her death and feels guilty about it. When Spider-Man's going to confront him, he's actually recording a video giving up being Mysterio, and it's pretty funny. There's a moment where Spider-Man's like, my spider sense isn't going off. He's dulled my spider sense before. Like, it's probably one of Mysterio's tricks. And that's a nice callback because Mysterio has tricked his spider sense before quite a few times. But it's important to note that Spider-Man barreling in like that super violently is not a thing that he would normally do, which is definitely kind of a. It seems like David's taking some time to step away and allow us to pick up the threads of the symptoms of the symbiote's effects on Peter, rather than giving us an exposition-laden issue of things that are happening. It could be a subtle build-up. There is some oddness for if you've read much of that era's stuff with the Felicia Hardy stuff, because she famously said she's in love with Spider-Man, not Peter Parker, and didn't want to do anything with Peter. So this is kind of going against that, but it's actively going against that because she states that. So that's kind of interesting, but that would put it towards... No. So she was, by the time they were doing stuff as Peter and Felicia, I think it was right at the tail end of him having the suit, which would have meant she would have seen it quite a bit at that point. So it kind of puts it at a shaky point in the actual timeline. The Marvel sliding time scale really quickly falls apart when you actually think about it for more than 2 seconds. So it's really worth stressing about too much. Like, you're going to the 60s to 2019 and want it to encompass 12 years. It just doesn't work. But, Peter David, like you said, went out of his way to say that this takes place within continuity. And, I mean, it's like one day. So you could say that one day could fall anywhere. And it's in continuity. Obviously, it might do some more in-depth stuff storyline wise later. I mean, I would hope so.
It's not one more day.
Yeah. Well, one more day. Brand new day. Cody, what did you think of it?
So I actually really enjoyed this book. I thought that this was some of the best Greg Land art we've seen in quite a while. Like, he kind of got himself into a bit of a rut for a while, and now this feels like a nice blend between his, semi-photo realism, but also like caricature and cartoonish artistic license, right? So it felt like a comic book, and his comics don't always feel like comic books. So, I mean, I appreciated that. I'm a huge Peter David fan. I just love the oomph that he puts behind his writing. I love that he always wants everything to be an epic. Go read his Aquaman, all you naysayers out there. His Aquaman was just absolutely stellar for like damn near a decade. So to Matt's point, to JJ's point, like the Marvel sliding time scale, not an issue for me. I don't buy it. I think whoever said it was probably talking out their ass when they said it. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't hold up in court. It's bullshit. There is no 12-year encompassing time span. It just doesn't make any sense. So no, that didn't bother me at all. Not in the slightest. Actually, I like the imagery of Peter swinging between the towers like that. Stirs a certain something in a number of people, and I think that was what they were going for, and they hit it. They hit it right out of the park on that. As far as being about the symbiote and its effects on Peter, I'm going to speculate a little bit because obviously this is the first issue. There's 5 issues to come. I'm going to speculate that a big part of this story is going to be about not the impact of the symbiote on Peter, but the impact of the symbiote on the people around Peter. So what you see is this grieving, devastated Mysterio talking like, I'm out. I'm done. Nah, I don't want any part of this anymore. And then Black Suit Spidey comes in, bashes his face in. Like that's an intentional consequence of the added rage, the added loss of control of emotion that the symbiote brings to the table for Peter on somebody who really didn't want it and really shouldn't have gotten it. So, as this progresses, like the teaser at the end is, Mysterio's, new ally or whatever, his mysterious new ally. He's going to be bringing more people into this web, potentially people that don't want to be a part of this web, that are going to instead get drawn in by this unchecked rage that the symbiote provokes in Peter. And I think that's a really interesting angle if it goes in that direction. That could make this, a really strong Spider-Man story. I'm not going to say it's the best Spider-Man story going right now, as long as Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is out there and issues like, Amazing Spider-Man number 18.hu. There's some phenomenal
Superior Spider-Man number 3 was also phenomenal.
Yeah, like there's a lot of really great Spidey right now. So I mean, it might get lost kind of in the wash of things. Oh, and Life Story too from Sartsky. So I mean, there's a lot of great Spidey happening right now. This might get lost in all that, but I think it has the potential to be stronger than anything I read last year. So there's that. That's my hot take. Any last thoughts on Spider-Man?
I did forget to say, I absolutely love the panel of Spider-Man trying to jump out the window, and it's a wall because he's in Mysterio space.
Right.
He's like, oh God, I hate this guy.
Really, really well done.
He just full on like Looney Tunes, like blah, right into the wall. Oh, that's funny. And then he just blows through the wall, which again is him losing his temper.
Right.
Like he's like, well, screw it, and then he just blasts through, which the symbiote makes him a lot stronger. So that's another thing.
Matt, did you have any final thoughts? This is your book, so we've kind of.
I do feel like maybe I was a little hard on it in my initial review of the book, and I didn't adequately convey the things that I did enjoy about it. Peter David knows how to write Spider-Man. He wrote The Commuter Cometh, which is one of the all-time great single-issue Spider-Man stories ever, and a bunch of other great Spidey stories. So, my faith is always going to be in Peter David. And I, perhaps should have conveyed that more thoroughly than nitpicking it to death. That we could probably go back and forth about the sliding timescale thing all day, but I'm just going to chalk it up to being a nerd. So, no, that's it for me. It not a home run, but I think it does have the potential to build to something. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Well, moving on to our second book, we're going to cover Outer Darkness, numbers 1 through 6. The first book of this series ended. It's from Image. It's being written by John Layman, art by Afu Chan. I was really skeptical. JJ has asked me to read other sci-fi books.
I've been telling people to read this book since like October, and nobody has. It's insane.
Well, I did read Infinite Dark, like you trapped me into that one, and it was just so bad. So like anytime JJ mentions a sci-fi book, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like your taste in sci-fi is a little suspect at best. So I sat down this morning actually to binge read.
I do read a lot of Alien and Predator comics. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I stand by my statement. So the basic premise of Outer Dark is you've got a disgraced starship captain. Maybe he wasn't a captain before this. It kind of seems like maybe he wasn't, but you beat him as he's not following orders, as he's basically just in open defiance, like straight up mutiny. And you flash forward a couple of weeks, and he gets offered a job with the military on some long, deep space recovery mission. And we're going to give you our best recovery vessel, a vessel you served on for years before you fucked that one up somehow. We haven't gotten that story yet. And we're going to make you the captain. We're going to give you double insurance, whatever. Go on this mission for us. And Captain Riggs is like, all right, as long as I get to bring my boy, let's do this. Let's pony up. So he gets all his assurances. He gets his ship. And then you kind of start to see how not traditional this world they've put them in is. There are gods serving as engines to ships. The ships are all haunted. There are archdemons, lesser demons, ghosts and wraiths and specters everywhere. People die and their spirit flies out, their soul slot flies out, and they are capable of retrieving it and putting it back into the body. Like there's a lot of shit going on in this book. And a lot of stuff that's really well explained without any exposition. None. Like they go straight into, I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to show you how this works. And that as somebody who's taught writing courses, who has taken many writing courses, like that is something I can really appreciate, especially in an era where sci-fi books just seem to want to just talk for hours. 500 words a page. You're just kind of scrolling through text boxes crammed into each other as they explain, terraforming this particular planet in this particular system with these particular pieces of equipment. This book doesn't do any of that. Like, they're talking about exorcists on this ship. Oh, shit, there's a ghost. All right. Well, I guess we understand why they have exorcists on the ship now. I thought that was just exceptionally well done. I don't want to delve too deep into the story. Because this is an entire arc with a lot of twists and turns, a lot of unexpected delays for their mission. As of right now, I think they're 10 days behind schedule or so, and it just keeps adding up. 1 day here, 4 days there, 6 days there. I don't know if they're ever going to get there, but I'm along for the ride. Like it's a hell of a journey. The art is not my cup of tea. But in a lot of ways, I think it works because it does kind of hold a more cartoonish, psychedelic kind of quality to it that I would never look at and pick up. But having picked it up now and having read it with the story and art in conjunction, it works. It's fine. Not my cup of tea, like I said, but it serves the story well. Yeah, I dug it. I really did. I didn't think I was going to, and I really enjoyed it. So thanks, JJ, for a change. You made me read something that I actually enjoyed. Give us your hot take on it, since you've been reading this book since it started.
Yeah, I picked up the first issue, literally based on a promo poster. I was like, "That's a cool poster. Go ahead and put that on my poll." But this book, since the start, has just gone out of its way to show us something different than any other book on the shelves at current time. It's like a classic Star Trek vibe mixed with like Hellraiser, which I know sounds a lot like Event Horizon, but it's not exactly. It's not anything like Event Horizon. But there are demons, people get possessed, people get they sometimes have to pick up people who are guaranteed, where someone dies and they pay basically insurance to ensure that their soul is retrieved, so their life is guaranteed, which is a really interesting thing to me. Likewise, some of the art isn't great. I wouldn't even say isn't great. It's just it's not as good. Like the people panel to panel don't look super great every panel, but at the same time, like the demons and the ghosts and the specters and the monsters look amazing. And to me, it actually kind of gave me almost an idea or something that maybe the story isn't about the people, and they're not the focus artistically and potentially in some parts of the story. But at the same time, I love the way this series introduces plots and subplots. And by the end of the first arc, there's probably three plots going, if you include the actual mission, which, like Cody said, might never finish in this series. But yeah, it's just, and all the subplots start to coalesce at the end of the first arc and leave us with a pretty solid last panel or page, I think, that leaves you interested for when it picks back up. I'm definitely going to be getting the second arc of this. And I do think that the art seems to kind of grow on you as you go. And there are some pretty brilliant panels from time to time. There's a splash page in issue number 4 where, without giving any spoilers, someone's cut in half and their body's floating away because they're on an asteroid. And so the body's floating away, and above it, you see the ship floating above them, and just all of it, the perspective of it, and the shape of everything is amazing. Which makes me feel like the art for people from panel to panel is a stylistic choice and not a skill choice, which also makes me a little more lenient of it. I don't think that Afu-chan is I hope I said his name right, I think he's a pretty excellent artist, who maybe spends a lot of time on the ghost and demon panels and less blows out the non-important boring stuff sometimes, maybe, to get to the more ghost and demon panels. By the end, the archdemon, I think it was the archdemon, that they were amazing. And I loved, like, I'd say it came out monthly, and there was never a month where I didn't read it and look forward to the next issue. What did you think of it, Matt?
Oh, I absolutely love this comic. And I'll actually start with the art, because that seems to be the most controversial point of the book. I remember you raving about this series a while back, so I kind of glanced through issue 3 at my comic book store, and I saw the art, and I was like, no, this isn't for me. Just isn't. Afu-chan's style has more in common with Fred Himbeck than it does traditional comic art. But like you were saying, the more I saw it and the more I read the story, the less it stood out. I mean, it just flows so organically. And there's something about the way that it's colored too. Like, it almost looks as though colored pencils were used on it, which maybe that's right. But man, it just works with this story for whatever reason. It shouldn't, but it does. And yeah, I wound up not noticing the art at all, just because I was so invested in the story from the end of the first issue. Everything is just so well crafted. The whole world is so lived in. And like you were saying, Cody, the fact that there's tons of information relayed without it being spoon-fed to you in a bit, or rendered in a giant exposition dump, is nothing short of miraculous. And it says a lot about John Layman as a writer. So yeah, this book man, that the first issue especially would have been a 10 out of 10 for me. Just it was absolutely fantastic. Kept me guessing. I kept thinking that it was going to do the traditional trope of introducing Joshua Riggs, the new captain, as being a giant asshole, and then eventually we find out his tragic backstory, and then he's sympathetic, blah blah. No, he's just kind of a dick, and I like that. I like the fact that that Layman writes him in a way that he's this giant asshole, but you still like the guy. It's been a long time since I've read a story with a lead character written quite that way. And Spider Jerusalem comes immediately to mind. But I do look forward to seeing more about his backstory and why he is the way he is. Because there's definitely something there. And I think John Layman is a smart enough writer that it won't be what we're expecting, which, like I said, at least following traditions of tropes would be the tragic backstory. Now, we do know that he's the reason, the carrot that he's following to accept this mission to the outer darkness has something to do with a her, so wife, daughter, I don't know. I guess we'll find out at some point. But this series is absolutely awesome. It is must reading. It needs to be on everybody's pull sheet. And it's got some really awesome ultra violence too. So, hey, that's my hot take on Outer Darkness. Cody, over to you.
Yeah, so we're in rare agreement that we all really enjoyed this book, and go pick it up. It's in stores now. Volume 1 just wrapped. I believe the trade comes out this week, I think. So jump on that. Highly recommended.
It comes out this week. The last issue came out last week. Is it that fast?
Image is real fast about getting trades out.
Man, that's awesome.
So I mean, I'd have to double check. I actually just closed the window that would have told me all the answers.
It's all good. If you're a fan of horror comics or sci-fi, just you want to check this book out. And it's Image, so the first trade, volume 1's going to be either $10 or $12, depending on how long they're going to run the series for. So it'd be silly not to check it out for that price.
You're muted, Matt. Matt, you're muted.
My bad. I was looking at the Image site for the trade release. It's actually May 15th.
Oh, okay. Still pretty quick.
Still pretty quick, yeah. I can't wait to get my hands on it.
So, our last book of the week, I think, is another controversial pick. I don't think we're all going to agree. In fact, I'm 100% positive we won't. Wonder Twins from DC Comics. This is being written by... I always want to call him the wrong thing. Written by Mark Russell, art by Stephen Byrne. I'm going to be full disclosure here. I hated the first issue. I enjoyed the second issue. I loved the third issue. So, I mean, this is a book that has grown on me. And I didn't have any expectations for it. I mean, Mark Russell has made a name for himself writing things like Flintstones and Snagglepuss. He's also going to be writing Second Coming from Ahoy Comics, which, was at Vertigo, and Vertigo was like, I don't know, it's kind of controversial. We're not really sure we want to go that way, and you can go shop it somewhere else. Ahoy picked it up.
This was the imprint that published Preacher.
Right. Yes, the imprint that published Preacher took a look at Second Coming and was like, I don't know. So, I mean, I know that this is a writer that should be on my radar. I know that he is a writer that's going to write something that is going to be politically, socially, culturally charged, which is the reason I gave Wonder Twins a chance. And like I said, at first I was like, man, this is too goofy, silly, cartoony. But as it starts to develop, you start to see kind of the central themes he's dealing with here. And I mean, in a lot of ways, it's the same as the central themes he's going to be dealing with in Second Coming, which is that humanity is garbage. We have taken a couple of wrong turns at Albuquerque and have wound up where we're at. And it doesn't look so hot. So imagine if you're an alien that's raised in a completely different culture and social climate, and you come here and you're like, what the hell is a prison? Why do you need prisons? This is insane. So you've got Zan and Janya, is that right? It's been a long time since I've watched the show too.
Jaina.
And Jaina, and they're acclimating to being heroes on Earth, while also being high school students, which is also kind of brutal, especially lately, with all the bullying and cyberbullying and all the other crap that's going on in our culture. So, I mean, I thought that he did a really good job, or has done a really good job, of weaving these social commentaries in without them feeling overly ham-fisted. I mean, they're obvious, but they're not like X-Men Black Magneto ham-fisted, punch you in the face with a concept and just hope that you don't punch back.
It's not two characters standing in a cafe going, "That's a bad law. Someone should change it. Yes, they should." And then they stare at you for like 3 more panels.
Yes, exactly. We get a tragic backstory for Gleek, which I really enjoyed. I appreciated this, any kind of characterization of Gleek. I mean, I feel like Gleek has just been forgotten since I was like 4 years old, and now all of a sudden,
monkey.
And now Gleek's back, and he's riding bicycles, and he's fucking up bad guys. I mean, they're dealing with the League of Annoyance, which is just populated by just fantastic, like, standalone Silver Age character stories, all together, come together, organized by Luther of all people. Like, it's an enjoyable book. It's fun. It's doing a lot of really good things. The art is perfectly fitting to the style of the story. It's a little silly. It's a little cartoony. It's fucking meant to be. Like, that's what they're going for, and they're nailing it. Like, they're getting exactly what they promised. They're giving you a cartoony social commentary that's fun to read. Matt.
Yeah. So like you, I was very pleasantly surprised with this. I went in with 0 expectations. And yeah, like you, same with you, my enjoyment of each successive issue increased. As a matter of fact, I tried to read issue 1 a couple of other times, and just for one reason or another didn't put it down or didn't get through it, and just never felt the need to pick it up. So this sort of forced me into it. But it's funny that we review this book on the same week that we review another Peter David book, because that is exactly whose writing style this issue reminded me of, was that sharp, witty commentary that Peter David does so well. I think Mark Russell is able to do with a little bit more of a slyness to it, and but he's also layering it under some absolutely hysterical gags. Like, there's a bit at the end of issue 2 involving the Druncula, the vampire who is 30 days free without a drink, going to jail and then getting thrown in the drunk tank, and everyone's like, "Oh no!" And yeah, he killed everyone in the drunk tank. The way that it plays out is just flawless. It just reminded me so much of Peter David, and I loved that. Like you, Cody, I loved that there was social commentary without beating you over the head with it. I thought that the commentary on the American prison system was especially well handled. So Stephen Byrne's art. I swear I've seen him on other DC books that were more in their mainstream, like maybe Starfire or something of that nature. I'm not 100% sure. Something with a lighter tone, and I could be wrong. And I remember his name, but I just never remembered him making much of an impression on me. But his art was perfectly suited to this story. It's light, and almost, it actually reminds me a lot of Mike Wieringo, in terms of just the way that it's able to simultaneously have a light touch, kind of cartoony, but also equally convey strong emotional depth. That was great. I really like his art. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for him in the future. Wonder Twins is not going to be for everybody. I really recommend it. Now, for somebody for whom it is not, JJ, what did you think of it?
It's not for everybody. That is very true. Um, I personally am not a big Mark Russell fan. I feel like he writes a lot of his characters sounding more or less identical. I don't feel like there are a lot of distinctive voices within these books. It seems like everybody is the same exact type of like chatty, candid, friendly. Like you got Batman telling stories about high school. You got Superman telling stories about high school, and that was a very uncharacteristic Superman story that he told about him being in high school too, because he's talking about macking on some chicks, which is very un-high school Clark Kent from someone who's read a lot of high school Clark Kent stories. Not that you guys have, I know you guys have too. I did like. Are we talking the whole series or just number 3? It doesn't matter. It's the first time I've talked about it. I did like them. Um, not even tricking Mixie Spittlelick into saying his name backwards. They just had the computer do it because was it last year now? Last year I read the first 500 issues of Action Comics, and to prepare for Action Comics 1000 to come out. I was trying to hit 1000, but I didn't quite get there. But I got to 530 or so in the 1 month. But uh, I don't do comic read projects with timeline or with deadlines anymore. It makes things too hard. I was reading 25 issues a day for a while. But when you're reading that many issues of Action Comics, the issues of because Mixie Spittlelick came like every 5 issues for a while because it was his 90 days. He did a thing where he was banished when he said his name backwards. He'd be banished for 90 days, and then he'd come back 90 days later, which worked out, I guess, in the 50s to every 5th or 6th issue, whatever it is. So there's a ton of Mixie Spittlelick issues in the 50s, and it was almost always some weird way that Superman would trick him into saying his name backwards. Yeah, I'm saying it right. I see you googling. but so it was funny to have an updated version of a way to trick him into saying his name backwards, officially, unofficially, because it'd be things like it'd be a Wheel of Fortune type thing where you'd flip all the letters, and then you'd be spelling it out as he goes. KL. What does that say? You got me again. It was always so forced. So that was pretty clever. I didn't hate the social commentary angle. It's not an incorrect angle. I just thought it was a strange platform to take it from. I mean, obviously you say it where you can say it, but it's an odd arena to take a stance on the public prison system. A book about the Wonder Twins. Speaking of the most recent issue, I did like getting a more in-depth kind of feel for the Legion of Annoyance, because previously we only heard a couple of them speak and stuff like that in the second issue. And it's funny because I didn't catch that the guy's name was the Scrambler. But I did catch he had an egg on his shirt, and I was like, why does he have an egg on his shirt? And then when it clicked in my head, that was actually really super funny. Likewise, Amphetamine saying, we stayed up all night and came up with a plan. I think you'll like it. Was the funniest damn thing. And then they put him in plastic.
A guy named the Malingerer, whose power appears to be that he's always kind of sick.
Yeah. And then they have the guy come, like the math and whatever his name was, Eli Math or something along those lines. The guy was working for LexCorp and got roped into working for the Legion of Annoyance, and it was just so funny. Like, what's he gonna do? He's not a super villain. So I will say that's probably gonna have some fun down the road. And I am a sucker for a good monkey story, as you guys know. And PTSD Monkey is no exception. So the more I think about it, I didn't dislike the issue so much, but I just I don't necessarily like Mark Russell's dialogue very much, and it can come off as a little tedious to read at times. Um, a little dense might not be the right word, but dense is probably the word, or is the word I'm going to use. Seems like every word bubble is two or three sentences, which when you have 30 word bubbles on a page is like 14 paragraphs of reading per page. With a 22-page comic, I think the first issue I probably checked how much longer it was 3 or 4 times. Uh, but um, but actually, my first note is how long is this issue? Um, um, all in all, it's a fine series. If you like silly books that are attacking social issues, it's fine.
Well,
That's all I
all
got to
right.
say about that.
That is a wrap on our spotlight books this week. I think this was a good week for spotlights. Honestly, like we were kind of at one point like scrambling, like looking through like what happened this week. What can we talk about? And like barring revisiting some stuff that we had just very recently done, like we kind of struggled for a minute, and then we came up with some good ones. So you're welcome. So now, what did you read this week, and what are you looking forward to next week, JJ?
Well, I got the Batman by Grant Morrison omnibus recently, and I have it all in singles, and I read it all as it came out, so this will be probably my 4th time reading it. But it is interesting to read it all in like quick succession because I read it, like I said, as it came out slowly, and then I binged it a couple years ago. But I don't know that I've read it since it came out in sequence, like just straight through. So that's kind of interesting. Like I skip around a little bit when I'm reading it. Like I don't really care about the Black Glove, but I like Joe Chill in Hell, and I like the Batman and Son arc. I like Rest in Peace. Okay, Last Rites is amazing. Uh,
You didn't like the Black Glove arc?
It's fine.
Yeah, it's like the crown jewel of the Morrison run.
But and it is kind of interesting because the omnibus has they do like a truncated Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul summarized in 2 pages instead of having the issues in there, which I don't really care. I have had the hardcover for Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul since like 2009, so but it's just kind of weird, a strange choice. They have the opening issue of the Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, and then the next to last issue of Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, not the last issue. So it's the issue where the resurrection is first introduced, like the prelude, and then the issue where the sensei kicks the crap out of Batman and breaks his arm, and then stabs him through the chest, and he goes into the fountain of life. Spoiler, I guess. 2008, 7, something like that. But yeah, that's what I have been reading. And then, as for what I'm looking forward to, War of the Realms #2, War of the Realms Punisher, and War of the Realms War Scrolls are out this week, which I am very much looking forward to, as well as some Image books that are returning from hiatuses. How about you, Cody?
All right. Put me on the spot. So this past week, as last week, I spent most of my time binging Game of Thrones. I binged season 7 in preparation for the season 8 premiere, and when I finished that, I picked randomly season 4 because I hadn't seen it in a while, and why not? So I've been immersed in Game of Thrones, and come Sunday, like we planned the whole day around the premiere. and then watched it, and then I watched it again, and then I watched it a third time, and then I reviewed it. So I've been living Game of Thrones pretty seriously for about 7-8 days now. No regrets at all. I thought that the premiere was good. Was it everything that we had hoped it would be? No, probably not. But it did a good job of moving things around, getting you up to speed, getting certain characters up to speed with things that had been revealed or had been kind of pushed to the side. So, go Game of Thrones. Can't wait for Sunday. Like, now I'm just living for Sundays. It's like it's football season all over again. As far as things I'm looking forward to, this is going to sound weird coming from me. It's going to sound real weird. Batman 69 is the conclusion of the Nightmares arc. I'm looking forward to, one, that arc being over. And two, I might have already read it. And it might have been among my favorite Tom King books thus far. I mean, that's not saying a whole lot when it comes to his Batman. But, I mean, I enjoyed the issue. I finished it, and I was like, all right. This is happening now. Cool. Which is high praise for me. It's high praise for Tom King for me. So
I liked it less than you.
I'm not surprised you like everything less than me.
That's true.
Except for War of the Realms. You like that a lot more than I do. Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Meet the Skrulls. Yeah, there's a handful of other things. Aquaman, Kelly Sue DeConnick's Aquaman has been just out of this world great. I know I keep talking about Aquaman today for whatever reason, but I mean, legit, like, I love Aquaman. So, there, take that. Matt, how about you?
Hey, Aquaman is pretty cool. Let me just be honest. So what I've been reading, I read Detective Comics 1001 after we all kind of bashed that lead-in story a couple weeks ago in issue 1000. And I got to say, I was very pleasantly surprised. I like the idea of this just crazy vigilante cult, for lack of a better term, springing up and deciding, nope, Batman hasn't gone far enough. This is how we're going to do shit. And it just completely catches Batman off guard. And like I said, very pleasantly surprised. I'm a little on the fence on the art. I might just have to get used to it because I was spoiled by having Doug Monkey for the previous arc. Other things I've been doing, and I'm finally trying to finish my Fourth World Omnibus. And
I haven't picked mine up since mid-December. I've been so bad.
Well, I've had a Silver Age Doom Patrol omnibus burning a hole in my shelf for 2 months now that I haven't started yet. So
I just got World's Finest.
Fourth World, and it's all coming together finally. And so hallelujah. Books that I'm looking forward to: Naomi from DC, #4. This has been a really, really awesome under the radar series that I think has probably cult classic written all over it. I believe it's going to get a devoted following. This has just been an absolutely fantastic book. I've been reviewing it for the site, and consistently from issue to issue, it's been the strongest string of reviews I've done for anything. So I cannot recommend this book highly enough. Please do yourself a favor and start at issue 1 if you're going to read it, or you might be a little lost. You never know. But yeah, awesome comic. Cannot recommend it highly enough. That's it for me. Cody?
Well, if that's it for you, that's it for us. So thanks again for tuning in. Remember, you can find us on Facebook. You find us on our website, www.comic-watch.com. Find us on Twitter @CWatchers. You follow all of us on Twitter. We have the Comic Watch Show Facebook page. You can find us on SoundCloud, on iTunes, on Spotify, on YouTube. There's a million ways you can bombard yourself with our garbage every single week for like an hour of your week.
Lucky you.
Just us. Lucky you. Just us. Just our crap. And as always, we will be back again next week.